Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford. She is the woman accusing him of sexual assault when the two were just in high school back in the 80s. They are set to testify under oath before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday. Senator Chuck Grassley announcing late last night that he will delay Kavanaugh's confirmation vote after facing mounting pressure from both sides of the aisle.
Obviously, if Judge Kavanaugh has lied about what happened, that would be disqualifying. That's why it's so important that we have testimony under oath with a lot of questions asked of both of them.
It is an insult to the majesty of the Supreme Court to rush this through when these serious allegations have come forward.
What I just insisted on is that we not have a vote. I would have voted no this week, absent her being able to tell her story. And so I'm glad she's going to be able to.
And while the testimony could impact the vote of some key senators, others on the Hill think the decision to hold a public hearing is too rash. This morning, Senator Dianne Feinstein calling on the FBI to investigate the allegations, writing in a statement, in 1991, 5 days after Anita Hill's allegations of sexual harassment became public against her wishes, the Judiciary Committee held 3 days of controversial hearings. Now, just 1 week after Christine Blasey Ford shared her story, Republicans want to repeat past mistakes, rushing the process to hold a public hearing. The decision to hold this hearing echoes Anita Hill's 1991 testimony against then-nominee Clarence Thomas. But there are some key differences. This time, the two will answer questions against the backdrop of the Me Too movement. This time, the two will not testify before a committee entirely made up of men. So what does the president have to say about the controversies surrounding his Supreme Court nominee?
Judge Kavanaugh is one of the finest people that I've ever known. He's an outstanding intellect, an outstanding judge, respected by everybody. Never had even a little blemish on his record. At the same time, we want to go through a process. We want to make sure everything is perfect, everything is just right.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.